Okay, so here is the lentil recipe. First, you're going to get lentils. I usually do 4 bags because it's a lot of work, and I like to get it all done, and then I just freeze it and it lasts me a couple of weeks. Now, what it's going to tell you on the bag is that you have to sort the lentils. Now, I didn't know what that meant until I almost broke my tooth on one of these. You're going to find these little rocks in there, or even not quite as dangerous, but still annoying, a piece of rice or some other kind of thing that's not a lentil. So that's what it means by sorting them, and you literally have to go one like this. So it's going to take me maybe an hour to get through all of these bags, but don't neglect doing that. So this batch has been sorted, and you can see I came up with just a few little odd things. It was only one rock. Sometimes you go through a whole bag, you don't get anything. You get really nervous, but it could happen. But I just wanted to point out that I have this great cutting board that has this edge. If you don't use something like this, trust me, you can have lentils all over the floor, and you should still have it far away from the end of the counter because they tend to jump anyway. I have tried using a metal cookie sheet, but it's dark. The white background really helps. So if you can find one like this, that's great. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take these and put them in a pot, but don't put them with water. A lot of these bags will say that you need to soak the lentils. You do not need to soak lentils. So just put them in a pot until you have all the lentils done. If you're doing just this, then you would just put it in a smaller pot, but I'm using a big giant pot, which you'll see as we continue with the recipe. This box, there was this little white, almost like the color of the lentil. So you gotta be careful. That is a rock, and that would break a tooth. So look for those white or black rocks. Let's find them. It's a testimony for how painful it was when I bit my first rock. I just want you to see all the weird things that I found in those 4 bags, and it did take me not quite an hour, about 47 minutes. So watch for those things. Make sure they're not going into the soup. Okay, so you can see I have this big giant pot that I have all 4 pounds. That's 16 ounces, 4 bags. At least 1 pound. You don't want to do less than that. And you're going to rinse them. This is different. Soaking and rinsing is 2 different things. So you're going to rinse them. Just make sure the water, they say you put 2 cups for every cup of lentils, but I just, make sure it's well under the water. And just kind of mix it around a little bit. You want to rinse them. Now some people will save the rinse water and actually use it. I don't like that. I'm just going to drain out all that water and then put nice fresh water. As a matter of fact, I use filtered water for when I do it. So I'll give you the ratio of the water to the lentils as soon as I'm done. You don't have to use as big a colander as I'm using because you're going to have a lot less. But if you are making 4 pounds, you need a colander. It's pretty big. And you're going to notice those holes are pretty big in that colander. So I may lose some of these lentils through it. So you're going to be careful for that. But I'm going to go ahead and drain them now. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple of little rinses here and there. Okay, so now you're going to take, for every cup of lentils, you're going to put in 3 cups of water. So those 16 ounces is 4 cups. So I'm just going to dump them in there. So you got 4 times 3. We're going to do 12 cups of water. Okay, so we got the water in the pot, and we're going to turn it up very high. You're going to put the highest heat on the biggest burner you have, and you're going to wait till it's boiling. You'll see the boiling will start coming through. I'll show you. And also, I put in a tablespoon of salt. I know that sounds like a lot, but you're not going to put any other salt in. If you can put salt later, then don't put that much salt. I put 4 tablespoons of salt, so 1 for each of those pound bags. Okay, so once you hear it simmering, I already turned the heat down, but it was simmering, and you'll see some bubbles popping up in the water. You're never going to see it actually come to a real full boil, but that means it's at the temperature. It's probably about 6 to 10 minutes. And then you're going to turn the heat down to low, to simmer, or, the lowest setting you have. You're going to cover the pot but leave it cracked like this. Okay? And you're going to cook it for 20 minutes. Now, normally the recipe will say 30 minutes, could even say 40 minutes. That's if you're going to eat it right away. We're going to cook this again later, so you're only going to cook it for 20 minutes. You can stir it occasionally, but it's really not necessary. So you're going to have to prepare your carrots ahead of time, or while the water's cooking, and you want them to be pretty fine. Okay, so you're going to chop them. It's okay if they're like that, as long as they're not so big. You want to make sure they all cook about the same speed. Okay, and then you're also going to, I'm going to use about half a cup of carrots for each pound, so that's going to be 2 cups for me. It's probably more than 2 cups, but there's really no set recipe on this. You can do whatever you want. I like carrots when they're mixed with the other savories. It kind of picks up the flavor, and so carrots are good and they're also healthy. I use shallots instead of onions, so I'm going to use a half a shallot for each pound, and just 1 clove of garlic. But I'm Italian, so I'm going to throw in an extra one. So if you're doing, you would use a half of one of these or 1 clove. Unless you really like garlic, then put 2. And then this is lemon juice and lime juice. So again, a half a lemon for every pound. So I got 2 lemons in there, and just about maybe teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of lime. I got a half a lime in here so figure a quarter of a lime for each pound. And then you're going to chop these very, very fine. I'll show you what they look like after they're cut. I wanted to point out, when I said 2 shallots, sometimes the shallots already split. These are those 2 shallots that I showed earlier, and when you unpeel them, they split into half already. So you would use 1 of these for every pound, more or less. They're all different sizes, so use the bigger ones if you like oniony taste. Otherwise, go with the smaller ones. Yeah, I took the pot off the stove. It's soaked up pretty much all the water, but don't worry, there's plenty of water in there. That's still going to be soaked up. And remember, you're going to put vegetable broth in this, and that's going to add the liquid that you're going to continue to cook it for the 8 minutes later. There's the carrots. So figure, like I said, about 2 cups of carrots, or a cup of carrots rather, for each. I'm going to have 4 cups. And then this is kind of what the shallots look like cut. So they're sliced pretty thin and then chopped, and the garlic is sliced again pretty thin. Now you want to cook your shallots a little bit first, and that's a medium heat, not too high. You don't want it really frying. You just want to get them all soaked. Oh, and by the way, that's about, let's see, I would say I put a quarter of a cup, maybe a quarter of a cup of olive oil. I like a lot of olive oil for each pound. Right, so you can use a quarter of a cup of olive oil, so it's really soaking in there. Alright, once you smell the onion getting nice and, again, you could use onion instead of shallots. You don't want the shallot flavor. And then about there, then you're going to throw in your garlic. And cook that, so the garlic's going to cook a little less. Most of this is all going to cook actually when you cook it later. Getting it on the camera. Alright. Don't cook it too long. You see the shallots are starting to get a little translucent. Just want to make sure that smells so good. You want to make sure you're getting the warm olive oil on everything. And then you're going to throw in the carrots. Now I've got more carrots than that. That's 2 carrots. 2 cups of carrots. I'm going to go get the other 2 cups of carrots, and we'll cook that down. And you're going to cook it until the carrots get soft, but not too soft. Again, remember, we're going to cook this again later. You just want to make sure that they're simmered and they've touched the oil. And if you bit into one of these, it would be softer than a carrot is when it's not cooked. Okay, so that looks about right. So you can feel that the carrots are a little soft. The onions are all translucent. The garlic has a little texture, firmness to it. That's going to cook down when we cook it later in the broth. And we're just going to take that and we're going to mix it as thoroughly in this as we can, because it's a lot easier to do when you have a cup of carrots and a lot less ingredients to mix together. Okay, so the carrots were mixed in. You got to let it sit for a little while before you put it in your containers. But I usually break it up into these 1-pint containers. These are all ice cream containers, which is why I'm on this diet now. But they're perfect for this. This is a little bit more than a serving. So there's 14 that I got out of the 4 bags, right? So you should be able to get 4 servings per 16-ounce bag. And then, of course, we're going to mix it with other ingredients when we cook it. But you want to make sure that this gets down to about room temperature. You shouldn't put them even in these containers until it's cooled off a little bit, but then you leave them out for a while until they get down to room temperature. It shouldn't really be hot to the touch before you put them in the freezer. So I'm going to put most of these in the freezer. If you're only making 4 servings, you're probably just going to put them in the fridge, which is perfectly fine. But again, you don't want to put a warm container even in the fridge, certainly not in the freezer. So, but then if you do freeze any, you would take it out the day you're going to have it for dinner, let's say, and you would put it out and make sure it defrosts, and then we'll continue with how you prepare it just before you're ready to eat. Okay, step 2 in the process of cooking your lentils. So first you're going to heat up some olive oil. I always put too much olive oil. Probably a tablespoon is enough. See, and then I have this rosemary. It's basically just dried rosemary that I'm going to crush up in my palm and then put in there to simmer. Okay, so see, it's all just kind of crushed up. Put it in there. And you watch it. Oh, it smells so good. Okay. Just let that get warm. And then I'm going to cut up some shiitake mushrooms, about this much. Don't use the stems, because they're too rubbery. These are a little dry, but they were fresh. They dried a little, but I would get fresh shiitakes, and you're going to put, slice them up, put them in there to simmer. Okay, so there's the mushrooms. Just going to let them simmer a little while in the olive oil. Stir them up with a wooden spoon in a minute, and then I'm going to put in the tomato sauce. Okay. Or I should say, not the tomato sauce, the diced roasted tomatoes. That'll come next. Okay, then you're going to get just the Hunt's fire roasted diced tomatoes. Put about half a can of and half for tomorrow. There we go, that's about half. And we're just going to let that simmer. Now to this you're going to add some other herbs. I like adding herbs de Provence. That's basically more rosemary and a bunch of other stuff. But you can put whatever you want. And you're going to add some vegetable broth. So you have your vegetable broth. You could use the one that's not salted, the salt-free. You have enough salt in the lentils already, but you're just going to put enough to cover the mushrooms. Now you can see obviously it stopped simmering, and you're going to bring that back up to a boil, and this is where we're going to also add, I have hot pepper flakes right here. Now these are not my crazy hot pepper flakes, these are just the regular normal hot pepper flakes, but sometimes I will use the hot ones. Carolina Reaper pepper flakes, but that's just a pinch. Don't touch your eyes after you do it. And then you're going to stir that up. Again, you might be tempted to add salt. You don't need salt. I'm going to add the Crème de Provence. Just kind of shake that in there. Might want to crunch that up in your hand too, but I like to leave it like that. So again, just a pinch. And you're going to bring that back up to a boil. And let's get our lentils. And this is one serving, that 1 pint serving. I'm going to wait till this is boiling. And then we're going to add this to the hot boiling soup mixture. And then we're going to add about the same amount of soup again. Okay, so once it's boiling like that, you're just going to open your lentils and put them in there. See, this brand of lentils is really good. They're nice and firm, not too mushy. And then you're going to, once again, add, if you like it thick like that, that's fine, but I like it a little juicier, and it's probably still going to soak up some of this. Just about that, but you see that's really 2 servings. I mean, I'll eat it all, but for most normal people, this is 2 servings. And if you want to make sure it's 2 servings, you get the whole can of tomato and twice as much of the vegetable broth, and then you can stretch the servings that way. Okay, so we're going to leave this here on a high heat. This has all been done with a high heat, and we're going to set the timer for 8 minutes. Now, it's going to start boiling. When it starts boiling, then you could, midway, you can turn down the temperature. You want to get it up to a boil and let it simmer for the full 8 minutes.